Our theme for this month is expansion. In unity, we believe that we are made in the image of God. Therefore, we have an inner place inside us, in our consciousness that is divine, that is God. So each of us are our individuated aspects of God here on earth. Expansion means broadening our human consciousness so that it's more and more connected to that God consciousness in us. That we live more and more from that space. We feel more alive and we feel free, more like the butterfly. Our 12 powers are strengthened. Remember those? Love, imagination, power, judgment or discernment, understanding, zeal, elimination or setting boundaries, faith, life, vitality, health, divine order, will, and strength. Want to live more with those more deeply? Want to live with more peace and more joy? Who wouldn't want that? Well, let's look at the butterfly. Since ancient times, beginning in Greece, the butterfly was used as a symbol for the human soul and for spiritual rebirth. Spiritual rebirth. Where do I sign up for that? Well, I'll ask you again at the end of this message. Because there is a part of expansion that comes before butterfly. That is release. We got to release those things that stand in the way of the expansion of our human consciousness so that we can live more from that God consciousness of us. So let's look at what happens for that butterfly to happen. The butterfly goes through what is called a complete metamorphosis, totally transforming itself. There's incomplete metamorphosis. Like when we see the frog, we can still see the parts of the tadpole, we can see that evolution. But who would ever think that that butterfly started from this little caterpillar worm? So here's what happens. From the time that it is an egg, the little caterpillar egg has these cells, and they're called imaginal cells. They hold the image of a butterfly. And that's how we, in fact, make things happen here on earth. We've got our power of imagination that holds what we want. So in this little caterpillar egg, there's these imaginal cells. And then the caterpillar bursts out of the egg, and this little caterpillar, and it starts eating chomp, 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 chomp on the leaves of the trees until it becomes a big fat caterpillar. And these DNA cells, they just say, okay, let's turn into a butterfly. Now. But it's not time. If they went into action too soon, the worm would die, it would never fly, it would never become a butterfly. So there's this hormone inside the caterpillar, it's called the juvenile hormone, and it keeps the level high, and its purpose is to say to these imaginal cells, not yet, not time, not yet, hold your horses. So then what happens? Well, this caterpillar, after some time, it's a big fat caterpillar, and it then suspends itself from this tiny string from its mouth, and it's suspended from a branch, and it stays there. It looks like it's doing nothing for a while sometimes several days. I watched a monarch butterfly do this once. It's just amazing. And then it starts kind of quivering. And then all of a sudden, kabloop! There's this chrysalis or cocoon. And so what happens in that cocoon? It's not pretty. It eviscerates. The caterpillar eviscerates from its chin all the way down to its tail. Its guts spill out. Stomach opens up, its guts spill out. Some of them start to decay, and then some of them turn into this soupy liquid inside there. And then other enzymes join in and start digesting all these guts, turning them into that soupy substance. Now it's time for those imaginal cells to start doing those things. So the juvenile hormone decreases and goes, okay, time to do your thing. And these imaginal cells then burst into action really quickly. The digested guts are rich in protein and provide the food for the producing of a butterfly. I think this is such a wonderful lesson that nature gives us. There's nothing that is a waste or a release that doesn't go into nourishing new life. Even poop, for the fertilizer. Chris Eagle gave some of us a great example of how dead trees provide food for the fungus. Nature says those things we release, they're going to be used. So that soupy substance is full of protein, and those imaginal cells use that protein for nourishment and quickly burst into all the parts. Some of them have parts of antenna and head and genitals and wings and body. And they form those things. And so it's really formed inside that cocoon, and then it's time to leave the cocoon. And it is a struggle. I hope you got some idea about that. What's that about? There's a story about a man who was watching this process. And if you've ever watched this process, man, it can go on for hours, that butterfly emerging from that cocoon. So this man watched for 2 or 3 hours, and he thought that he would help it. So he took some scissors and he snipped that cocoon, and he thought, now the butterfly can fly, I'll just make it easier for him. And what was there was this butterfly, but it had a big bloated body and shriveled wings. Why is that? What the man didn't know is that act of squeezing itself out of the cocoon forces these fluids from the body out into the wings, which allows the wings to strengthen. It helps give them their structure, and it lightens up the body so that the wings can carry the body. That caterpillar never flew. It walked around with a big swollen body and shriveled wings. Like it or not, sometimes our struggles in life are exactly what we need. If we take this lesson from nature that God also created, struggles grow us strong. We would not be as strong as we could have been, and we would never fly. So let's look at our soul, since butterflies are symbols for our souls, for rebirth, for transformation. The journeys that we're on here, our soul journey on this earth, are both human and divine. Like those imaginal cells of the butterfly, we have the soul DNA to transform ourselves and to make our human consciousness connected from that divine consciousness and to live from that. We have that DNA. And we also have that hormone. We have that part of us, the equivalent says, Not now, honey. Not now. You're not ready. You got some work to do. Come on. Oh, I want to go. I want to go. I want to be a butterfly. Come on. No, 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 no. Not yet. What are the parts of the worm of us that must die and be digested for fuel for the growth of the divine butterfly in us? Sometimes our version of turning into a butterfly and having to push our way through that cocoon is some life event that takes us to our knees. Could be the loss of a loved one, an illness, an extreme illness, a betrayal, loss of a job. Christian mystic Richard Rohr, in his book Falling Upward, says that one of the soul's secrets is that the way up is the way down. Sooner or later, something in life, again, is going to take us to our knees. Falling upward is a fall necessary for the upward evolution of our soul. Sometimes it happens only once, and it happens to those of us who are on a spiritual journey. And sometimes it happens more than once. My first one was age 19. We would never consciously choose it, says Rohr, but afterwards, we're so glad that it happened because we emerge more authentically our divine self. We emerge more authentically ourselves. Paul Hasselbeck, in his book Point of Power, talks about his journey. That book opens with his journey of falling upward. I read it and it brought tears to my eyes. He's going to be talking about that in the upcoming Spiritual Explorers Week. That is going to be given here soon. You'll hear from Chris about it in the announcements. I won't do a spoilers alert, but his story in that book, which you will hear about, he's using that book as the textbook, and it's called Practical Metaphysics is the name of the course that he's going to teach. Is that book, and I'm sure that course, was for me one of true inspiration and a testament to the transformative process of falling upward. Like the former caterpillar, some things gotta die. Some beliefs gotta die. Some relationships gotta die. Some ways we act gotta die. And originally in unity theology, there was a belief that the ego had to die. Now, our theology has evolved some since that time. And here is what we say now. That, and this explanation is in several different places. I use the one from Davenport's The Five Principles that we've just finished reading. So here it goes. We're a soul. And this soul is part of the divine. It's eternal. And it grows and seeks and encourages us to form a closer union with the God inside of us, the God that's everywhere outside and the God that's inside. And we are here on earth in a human body to navigate a human life. A big purpose is to learn whatever our soul needs to learn to continue growing. The ego is part of us that navigates more or less skillfully through our human life. Paul Hasselbeck said that if we were trying to live this life without an ego, we would be going about like a boneless chicken. I think that's good. The ego is not a bad thing. It just forgets that it isn't alone. It forgets that it is not in charge. It forgets that it doesn't have to carry the whole burden of our survival. that it is there, it forgets its purpose sometimes, that it's there to support the soul, and that the soul is there to support it. Ego is only here as long as we're on earth. When we die, the ego dies. We don't need it anymore. Spirit is everywhere, inside and outside us, and soul continues after death. So ego doesn't have to die. It has to serve the soul, and it has to serve the divine of us. And sometimes ego forgets that it's not in charge, so the soul has to correct it. That, too, is part of the release process, ego correction. Sometimes this process doesn't feel so good. My ego will sometimes go, no, I'm in charge and I've got to do it myself. What would you do without me? I want a little credit here. And we just, and I might say something like, yeah, ego, but you're not in charge. And don't you want a little help? You get tired all the time. I appreciate what you do, but I could have a little, I kind of like that guy upstairs. You mean I could be on the team? Yeah, that's it. You let yourself be helped some. I appreciate what you do. But sometimes this process of ego correction does not feel so good. Sometimes these releases also are happening unconsciously. We know we're going through something, but we don't know what. We can be a little irritable, a little down, a little depressed. It's that feeling like something's got me, and I don't know what it is. We are in hell. What is hell? In Unity, we do not believe that hell is a place that we go when we die if we've been bad. In Unity, what the origin of the word hell came from these incinerators outside Jerusalem that Jerusalem metaphysically is a very holy place of consciousness as well. But in the real Jerusalem, they would bring the trash out to these incinerators and burn the trash. So hell on earth is the purifying fire of spirit, just like those incinerators burning off the trash, working in us to burn off anything that keeps us from living more fully into our God consciousness. It doesn't feel good, but ultimately it does not harm us. It is a good thing. In fact, we are more free, more pure, more resting in the peace of the divine when we come through this process. And like what happens inside that butterfly cocoon, it's not always pretty and it's not always easy. The biblical story of the crucifixion is also a metaphysical story of that process. And since Easter's coming, we need to talk about that. Because what Lent, we are in Lent right now. We're in the season of Lent. And Lent in Unity is not about giving up something that we love, like chocolate or wine or something like that, so that we can binge on it on Easter. In Lent, it is that period of releasing so that we move toward that ascension, that turning into a butterfly, that rise from the grave, from the hell of purification on Easter. In Unity, so what's crucifixion about? In Unity, we don't believe that we were born in sin. As I said, we believe that we were born in the image of the divine. That at our core, we're all innocent and beautiful and God. So we do not believe that God sent Jesus down here to save us from some sin and to be sacrificed on some bloody altar like a little lamb to save us. No. He came to earth as both divine and human to show us how to live a human life from the God consciousness of us. He came here to be our way shower. In fact, in John 14, verse 12, he said, "Very truly, I tell you, the one who believes in me," that means in the Christ consciousness of all of us, "will also do the works that I do, and in fact, will do greater works than these." Greater works, well, it may take me a few more thousand lifetimes, but at least we can all work on it, lifetime by lifetime. Greater works than even Jesus did. It was possible to show us the way to live a human life from the full consciousness of God in us. Crucifixion, metaphysically, is the story of how we cross out all those things that keep that from happening. Those aspects of ourselves that stand between us and our inner connection with the divine of us. Because after the crucifixion, there was the resurrection and the ascension. He also came, the second reason he came was to contribute his life, his energy to the collective consciousness. Because humankind had been fallen into a lot of darkness up to that point. And there was a lot of darkness in the collective consciousness. Sin, we see sin as just that thought, those thoughts and actions that come from a disconnection with that God in us. It came from the early word for missing the mark in archery. Just miss the mark. So the collective consciousness is this energy field of energy that's made up of the collective individual consciousness of everybody that's ever lived and everybody that's living now, including you and me. And that collective consciousness, so we contribute to it. Everybody contributes to it. And you know what? It then affects us. Quick example. I used to love to fly. In my 20s and 30s, I just, even turbulence, I'd see it as a ride in a theme park. I never got scared. But one day, early in the 2000s, I started becoming terrified of flying. I was sure I was going to die in a plane crash. My daughter lived in Los Angeles at the time, and she was at a stage in her life where she needed some regular mom support. So I had a contract with myself, a covenant, that I would fly out there 5 times a year. 5 hours on an airplane when I'm terrified 5 times a year. I tried everything. I tried hypnosis. I tried meditation. I had a friend that said, now, if you get on the plane and everybody's auras are black, get off. I can't read auras. I tried everything. And then one day I was talking with a Jungian analyst friend of mine, and he said, Pat, is it possible that you have been affected by the collective consciousness post 9/11? We did not see that plane flying into those towers 1 or 2, 3 times. We saw it hundreds of times. And it affected the collective consciousness, and that in turn was affecting me getting on those airplanes. Once I became conscious of that, I said, oh, and my fear of flying went away. About that collective consciousness, Elizabeth Sand Turner, in her book, Your Hope of Glory, says, prior to the ministry of Jesus, mankind had been held in the bondage of limitation by erroneous belief and consequent sins. So it was Jesus' living that was his huge gift to us. to show us the way and as a gift of light to the collective consciousness. In his crucifixion, he showed us how to go through that process of spirits burning off of whatever keeps us from union with our divine consciousness. How to endure and overcome the falling upward. How our soul can endure the visceration and the spilling of our guts and transform us and turn into a free butterfly that lives more fully from God in us. 2 weeks ago, when we began this season of Lent, Reverend Victoria began the Lenten season in her message with prescriptions for release. So keep working it. And work it or not, it's going to work you. So you might as well go with it. You want to help Ukraine? Besides everything else that you're doing, release so that your individual consciousness can add to the collective consciousness. It's what Oswaldo encouraged us to do last week with the lighting of that candle and the holding of peace. Want to live freer and more joyful? Work this release process of Lent so that we can all be butterflies together. Easter is coming.